hi. I'm so
Hello, hello.
excited to have you on Viat's podcast. I'm so honored. I've been hearing about so much about your work from everybody. So I'm
Yes,
so excited to listen about your work and your amazing work and inspiring work you've been doing with music education. So let's
yes.
start with introductions. Share more about who you are.
Okay. Well, first of all, thank you for having me. So I'm Vincent Ferguson, AKA VFerg. So that's my artist title. So you got to have a couple identities these days. But yeah, I'm at the intersection of arts, education, and technology. So I'm a music producer would be
Hmm.
my first title, and yeah, I've always been interested in technology, but that led to I first started in banking, so I did
Yeah.
a full 6 years plus of that coming from undergrad, but that led to music, which led to education,
That's
and yeah.
interesting. Yeah, I would love for you to share more about like what was your first experience which you remember from your childhood or like growing up where you felt like creative, where you felt like very connected to music. Because it's interesting to see that you started with banking and you did it for so many years. So then what made you feel like, oh, I know I want to go back to a different career route? Like how did that happen for you?
Yeah, so I'd say my earliest experience was middle school.
Hmm.
So and yeah, listening to Nirvana and Soundgarden. So like a couple of buddies, we made a metal band in middle school,
Wow.
and it got supported by the school. And like we had mosh pits. It was intense. It wasn't even words. It was just like yelling and aggression and intensity, angst. But
Yeah.
like yeah, to see the effects of music on my peers, it was like
Hmm.
cathartic. It was like the energy thing that they needed. But high school, I was too cool. I was kind of in sports and stuff. But then in college, I was the intern of an intern at a recording studio.
Okay.
So while getting a finance degree, I was working in a studio
Hmm.
where I started picking up the guitar, but I learned how to engineer and produce.
Hmm.
So working at a bank, I started doing the math. It made more sense to buy the equipment than it
Hmm.
did to rent out studio time.
Yeah.
So yeah, for a couple of years, the unsustainable balance of making music, performing,
Yeah.
and working at a bank. So I had like a dual life thing going on that was not sustainable. No, no.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's fair. And I'm curious because now, and how did you work? Then you ended up at Hugsy and like with
hmm
education because you are like a performer, you create music. So then, why did you thought of like education also something you were interested in?
So education actually came because somebody that worked at the bank, my boy Weldon, shout out to Weldon. So he left the bank and was working at this teaching program.
Hmm.
So and he was a singer also. So he went to do music and supplemented the income by doing this, like
Hmm.
almost like teaching consultant in various schools. But they train their whole philosophy. The leadership program was the name was one of their core philosophies was that you can train an artist to be a teacher, and
Hmm.
they would just have that natural like connectivity with
Yeah.
just from performance and things like that. And but yeah, so that was the supplement income at first, where it was like, okay, I can do my music and do this teaching
Hmm.
thing, but the training was really good. So we went from a lot of the SEL training, experiential learning cycles. So it
Hmm.
was like we just were given tools to do the wizardry in class, and yeah, so I just kept getting more and more responsibilities and different things to where even being an assistant principal slash like community school director level.
Hmm. I'm curious, like, yeah, that's really beautiful also to kind of think about this integration which you brought with music and like teaching. And I
Mhm.
would love you could share more about how you did that, like SEL, belonging, community. There are so many big parts which you
Yeah.
brought with teaching, and I'm curious, like,
hmm
if you could share more about that.
Um, yeah, I'd say first of all, like sometimes it's just words. People be like SEL,
Yeah.
these are all hypothetical concepts, but I would say that combination between letting the students experience creating culture for their
Hmm.
own environments. So like my job as a consultant, like I set up think like rock band classes and various or music production classes,
Yeah.
but also these things that allow them to make their own soundtrack
Hmm.
and create their own vibe around their learning environment.
Yeah.
So, for example, we even made a music video, one of the middle schools, but that video they played a video like 3 times during graduation.
Hmm.
And like that was like their kind of capstone to
Yeah.
represent, this is our school song and thing that represents the culture of our
Hmm.
environment. So like it becomes like SEL in the sense of they learn about themselves through this art of switching from going from consumer to
Mm.
creator. And so like to see an empowered student, like because at a certain point
Yeah.
you're showing them the skills, but at a certain point they
Mm.
make their own decisions, and that just having that ability to, okay, yeah,
Yeah.
I can make my own decisions, I can create my own music
Yeah.
vibe culture. So seeing that is the thing that I appreciate, that just because there's so much noise and things that are influencing everybody, but especially the youth, to
Mm.
target to buy something or whatever behavior.
Yeah.
So so that thing to create their own culture.
That's so beautiful that you also mentioned how you mentioned about like just giving that like agency and creative space, because it's also what I've seen with like misconception of arts is like always seen as an outcome. It's like, okay,
Mm-hmm.
you learn this and then you produce this. The whole middle part is often like not given enough importance, or that whole
Yep.
conversation which is given, like the creativity is not always given. And I also feel like sometimes arts can also given like a lot of structure, and
Yep.
like to kind of, as you are mentioning, I also think about like how you're talking about balancing structure and freedom, and how do you teach the skills but also give them like this agency and like kind of, oh, go in the world and explore. And I'm
Mm-hmm.
curious like how you would like, if you could share more about like how this that felt, that excitement, if you remember something with a conversation with a child or like a student which you remember which stuck, which is like, yeah, this is why I like doing this
Yep.
work.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I'd say, you said one of the key words. So it's
Yeah.
agency. Like,
Hmm.
what is your ability to choose how your world looks, and to pick the to make the micro decisions,
Yeah.
and like to not just be followers of this popular thing that's going on. And so it usually rings true when uh, for example, even after graduating, so several of my students own and have recording studios
Mm.
that are just in
Wow.
Brooklyn or the Bronx, or they're artists in their own regard right now. And some have even become teachers and
Mm.
counselors. But they check back in and it'll be like, yo, thank you for that experience where I
Ah.
was able to. So for me, it's almost like the it's the time to have processing. So we
Mm.
make something. There's an experience where it might just be a complete disaster of a day, but it'll be slow
Yeah.
down. All right, what did you learn about yourself? What did you
Mm.
learn in this experience?
Mm.
And so it becomes that, where it's like this mix of real world skills
Mm.
meets their academic part. And I think some of it becomes that thing of how much time and effort you put in, you can get a product out, and they
Mm.
see the efforts that it produces a thing.
Mm.
So I say, or I've seen the correlation where they connect the dots. We're like, okay, I can put in the same amount of effort and things into my schoolwork also.
Mm.
So
Yeah.
we are in a, the instant gratification is a thing,
Yeah.
but we can now speed up the processes.
Mm.
So there becomes a thing that's representing them at a point in time that they earn in a collective environment. So it's not also them learning, or maybe it's one tutor or themselves doing something. This is a collective
Mm.
project. So you have a group of people growing together, making a thing that they're all proud of, and now it's like that agency becomes contagious.
Mm. Yeah, that's so cute. That is so interesting because it also makes me think about mindset and how you were talking about like how this is kind of a transferable skill which you're learning. It's not just
Yeah.
like you're creating music, but it's also kind of transferred to different parts of your life. And I'm
Mm-hmm.
curious, like if you like saw that happening like developmentally also when you're working with these students of different age groups and you see them like growing up, and like what was the kind of like how like music became like a language for them to
Hmm.
express and also kind of use those skills in different parts of their subjects or life.
Yeah, no,
Hmm.
yeah, it directly translates,
Yeah.
and it's because some of it also is, it's capacity building. Like there's
Mm.
braveness, there's boldness. Because usually in my facilitations there'll
Yeah.
be a learning, but then the final project will be to perform something. Like you're
Mm.
offering a gift to your community, and a lot of it is mindset. So some
Yeah.
of it is, I start on the first day. I don't even start teaching until maybe 2 3 weeks in,
Mm.
getting into, because usually I was teaching music production, rock band, audio engineering. But we start with the mindset stuff first, where it's like, all right, hyperconnectivity with the games, like trusting everybody in the room,
Mm.
like so sometimes, and especially in high school, it could be a hater culture where it's like people don't have the grace to try something new, so everybody wants to be the critic, like, oh, that's
Oh
trash.
yeah.
So but so part of mine, I think, is culture
Mm.
setting, where it'll be like, no, like, give people the grace to explore an idea. Like, everybody's gonna be trash the first beat you do, or that's not to industry standard,
Hmm.
but to have a place where people can experiment about even finding preference. So like things like that are super key. And then yeah, and some of it is so things like that, but also kind of the intangibles where I'll give the students power. So after I've taught somebody, if you're the star student and you get this audio engineering stuff, I'll fall back and be like, all right, now you teach the class. Like I shouldn't be. I'm just straight up. I'd be like, I shouldn't be teaching this whole thing. Like y'all got to show me the structure that you would do in order to teach the rest of them, get everybody else up to speed. And so like some of that becomes, I always refer to the classroom environment as a laboratory. So we're running these experiments and you all are deciding what the norms and behaviors are. I'll give a framework, but after a while, like what will speed up the process. You know the language to talk to each other, and yeah. So I'm towards the end of the last time trimester or quarter, whatever it is, halves. Yeah, I fall back because it's like, all right, now you all know what you're doing, so you can just build your own thing. It's more project-based learning type things.
Yeah, and interesting, like because you mentioned so much about like relationships and also removing this hierarchy, which is always mentioned in like classroom settings. That oh,
Yeah,
like the teacher is the giver of giving, and the children are the students are just gonna like take up. But there
yeah,
is no this exchange, which I think which you beautifully put is like, okay, you take forward. This is a project. I'm just there as
yeah.
a spectator and like kind of a facilitator to support, obviously, but more like you give the leadership power to the students, and I think that's also a unique part, which I feel like arts gives you is like maybe I have not
Mhm,
seen this happening a lot in different subjects unless obviously the teacher is willing to do that. And I'm
mhm.
curious, like what has been your interactions with teachers been like? What has teachers shared you with about music classes, and like how has that like kind of shown up in their classrooms too? As has been any like stories from teachers?
Yeah, well, because definitely because some of it becomes that
Yeah.
thing of yeah, like after the students perform and do a lot of their do their stuff, like they almost become the celebrities within their microcosm of the world. So
Yeah.
they become the influencers of, all right, if you work hard, you get this outcome. Check out this outcome that we got just from paying attention in
Yeah.
class. So I would say it's that
Hmm.
part where there becomes a level of the they become leaders just because of them being bold enough to express
Hmm.
themselves. And it's less about me being like, oh, he's this thing, but it's like, all right, you explored and you know the language to communicate with your peers to get
Hmm.
them to whatever motivate to do something.
Yeah.
And so yeah, so it's kind of that thing of, and sometimes the egos
Yeah.
will get out of control, they'll do whatever,
Yeah.
but it's that thing of like, all right, now be responsible with your influence. Like
Hmm.
this is a part of a culture of learning. The goal of school is to learn, so now integrate that energy and transfer it. But
Yeah.
you've had a good degree of freedom. You've seen the freedom,
Yeah.
so now like transfer that. So some of it's like that. So
Hmm.
it can be. That's also one of the tricky things.
Yeah.
Everybody wants like quantify. Give me the stats but some of those
Hmm.
things are intangible. Like how you going to measure classroom influence?
Yeah.
Because he or she could be doing something else that's negatively affecting the class
Hmm.
if they didn't have this creative experience or a different degree of shared leadership in a
Hmm.
learning environment. So yeah, so I look at it like that, where
Yeah.
I'm okay with everything not being able to be measured, but also like you said, it might come up in a teacher's conversation, be like, oh,
Hmm.
I noticed the change in blah 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 blah.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah, that's and yeah, that's very interesting. Like also like this like whole idea of like again like assessment rubrics, and like that's how like they kind of measure these like statistics, and that's why arts
Yep.
are always like kind of in the back, and like they're cutting off arts, and like all of these like access becomes a big part.
Yep.
And I'm curious, like what are your thoughts also, like A, being like access to the arts, and like what are the challenges which you see, and B, like these are two different questions. B is also this integration of just not one art form like with music, like but
Yep.
also have you worked with like different art forms in this like relationship, which
Mhm.
a lot of these art forms feel, because I feel a lot of time it's very siloed in schools. Like art is different, dance is different, visual arts is different, or like subjects are different. But I'm curious, like have you had like engagements in which like if you do like projects, kind of an amalgamation of different art forms too?
Yeah. So
Hmm.
so usually I've been in various positions where yeah, I controlled all the art forms in a,
Hmm.
in a, in a space.
Yeah.
So even from like I consider martial arts. Yeah, it's to me,
Hmm.
it's an art form. So would I be martial arts, dance,
Yeah.
music, choir, And so typically I'll have a final project that culminates a collaboration between all things. But yeah, so generally it's in each one of those things, if the facilitator or teacher is doing things correctly, like those elements are going to come up naturally. So I'd say it's that, and it's been tricky because it's in a way, a lot of times the arts become a thing that only the privileged have access to, and the pressures of the requirements of reporting from a school, they just got to make these test scores and make these like things that are solid, but yeah, at the cost of cutting certain things. And yeah, because again, the metrics of what's important might be different than the full developmental thing of a child.
Yeah.
And if you're not connected, because there's school leadership, and then there's the grassroots of the actual teacher facilitator doing things, and those goals might be different. It shouldn't be, but yeah, this is the reality of what it is. And yeah, and I've definitely been in situations where they just wouldn't provide money for either instruments or whatever, so you just have to be creative and out the box, and that's not under resourced. That's not a natural thing that every educator is going to do. So it's like, what do you do if you have no resources? So it's like it's a tricky space.
Yeah.
And yeah, so still trying to figure that one out myself. But yeah, these are kind of like those gray areas.
Yeah.
But yeah, and even in my current venture, Amplify the Human. So I work with adults, and but a lot of times like adults are so deep into like a standard PD. So when they're thrown into an environment where they're working with music production, AI, it's like a new thing. And for them, it's like a new capacity building. It's a new skill set acquired. And but the same rules of social emotional learning apply with adults. So part of my, kind of mental thesis and written down stuff is that, adults need to experience SEL before they can deliver an SEL curriculum correctly. So it's an experience where adults can kind of be the student again.
Yeah.
And yeah, so that part, it's like, all right, now you feel what it feels like. There's an empathy / you know what I mean? There's a different level of understanding. And yeah, my facilitations are fun. So my thing is, people learn fast from environments of joy and like, what is collaboration for real, not just under, what like scrutiny / rubric all the time. Like there's might be a rubric for something just as an expectation, but yeah, that freedom to, especially around the arts, because some of it is building something from nothing.
Yeah.
So that idea, even as a concept, can be new for even a seasoned teacher. So
yeah, I'm curious, like, if you could like share also more about this like teacher education which you're talking about, also like how, like what has been your, like how do you like support this like mindset change again for the teachers to bring into the classroom, because you're right, because they have not experienced arts themselves to be able to like also kind of vouch for it or say like why it is important to do it in my classroom. So I'm curious, like what has been your conversation with teachers been like, who have felt like rigid in the first, but then as they started building onto it and like, okay, yeah, we can find time in the classroom to do music or like doing an art form, like how has that kind of transition?
Yeah, so it's a tricky space because I typically, so I can come into a space and be a professional development, but now I've kind of switched my model to where there's a willingness to want to expand and learn. Because if you're kind of stuck in a way or want to be uncoachable or untrainable, like that's, a fixed mindset without the growth mindset, especially in adult learning, it can throw off the chemistry of the whole thing.
Yeah.
So I'd say one thing is more important in my mind is like the curation element.
Yeah.
And a lot of times I'll do facilitations for teachers and have people that aren't even educators in the room. They kind of just go through like a process of something. But but that ground zero, and to be relinquished the power and then be facilitated too, like to be in a trusted environment going through a process, and the outcome is now you're a trained SEL, whatever the terms or frameworks we might use. You just have another skill set. But a lot of times I'll just be like anything I'm doing here, steal it, take it into the classroom. Like this is like a new tool.
Yeah.
So I'd say it's that, and and I've been able to work on a global scale. So I might be in like Thailand or Japan or Bhutan. So I move around with it too. So there's a flow through that's similar in
Mm.
all educational styles, but then I think it's like the willingness of the teacher, educator, whatever. It's like that's the key
Mm.
thing that you're in that, and it's okay to be uncomfortable. So like
Yeah.
that's a part of it. Is it's a container where it's like I don't
Yeah.
know what I'm doing with this thing, because I might be like, all right, now you got to perform this thing that you did, but that, to
Mm.
ask an adult that might have had stage fright their whole life, like do this thing.
Yeah.
So yeah, and I'd say it's kind of yeah to see adults be brave. Then
Yeah.
in turn, I feel like now this just like another thing on your belt where it's like, all
Mm.
right. And I feel for me, especially being an art, I feel like the students know. They'll be like, all right, yeah, okay, this is a brave teacher. Like he's not just having me do something like he would do
Mm.
this himself. You know what I mean? So it's almost
Yeah,
like my
right. It's
own medicine.
like intuitive for the students
Yeah, because
also.
especially, and I'm in Brooklyn. I'm in the like they know. Like I'm trying to play them.
Yeah.
They'll be like, it's a different realness level depending on where you are. But
Yeah.
they'll smell it. They'll be like, nah, I ain't doing that. Like you wouldn't even do that. So
Yeah.
yeah, so those are the kind of things. It's like, but also
Yeah.
yeah, like breakthroughs where it's like people can have a
Mm.
lot of personal breakthrough from a
Yeah.
good experiential, well designed thing. And I'm also
Mm.
into yeah, it's like transformational work. My thing is like, why spend time learning something if you're not going to be
Mm.
transformed?
Yeah.
So that's kind of like more of adult thinking, but it's the same thing with the
Yeah.
kids. Like what? Like have them go through a thing, and you should discover something about yourself.
Yeah. Yeah, that's interesting. So do you do that? Like, do you document this in a way like to show teachers like how this transformation is happening? Like, how do you generally go about this with adult education? Because I find like tricky with teachers who are not very willing
Yeah,
to kind of free them up. But once they're free, it's just easy to like break in and like find a relationship which works with both of us.
yeah, yeah. But
Mm.
that's the thing where it's more effective for me to just go after the rock stars that already
Yeah.
have a degree of cloud
Understand.
influence and that are also willing to gain a new skill,
Mm.
because then that like everybody's with the scale, but to have an
Yeah.
effective teacher in a school environment that helps create the culture of learning that just permeates in a just a magical way.
Yeah.
So that's been my thing lately, where it's like these are also yeah, like the non-linear jumps where it's like, all right, this
Mm.
this teacher gains this skills in an environment now, makes all new administrative decisions if they have the power because
Yeah.
of what I mean, potentially because of this experience and
Yeah.
breakthrough. So yeah, so it's kind of like that where it's tricky to be, and usually I'll do maybe like a survey of something,
Yeah.
or I'll know something about the educator to see if they would
Tap.
fit the profile.
Mm.
But I would say part of it is yeah, protecting the ability to have a selection process when I'm doing this type of work.
Mm.
And with Amplify the Human, I,
Yeah.
I have the ability to pick and choose what institutions I want to partner with,
Mm.
and like to have that autonomy and to keep it in the realm of it's still experiment. So a
Yeah.
lot of it is whether it's introducing AI or the art, whatever else,
Yeah.
to be able to run experiments, but also I prefer willing participants. So yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I think I really love the part also of like this like domino effect which you're talking about. Like if we reach a quality, it's
Yeah.
easier to get translated than kind of reaching like a mass who's not nobody's gonna go in depth, but rather you reach out just to like five people who actually go through the depth of understanding it and then kind of go forward with it,
Yep.
which is I think amazing. And like now going forward towards like the challenges part, and I'm curious to know like what are the misconceptions of or challenges which you have faced around music education and just arts in general to
Hmm.
bring to spaces or bring to conversations with art people, not arts people, education spaces.
Um. Yeah. I mean, it's kind of like the age-old thing with some of this stuff. It's like, yo, you got to move the money. So like, you
Yeah.
have to fund places of research that aren't going to have the instant return, or like, because,
Mm.
and it's tricky because the it's a long-term play on the value of a learner, because you're starting from kindergarten all the way to high school. Like that's an
Mm.
amount of time that's longer than an investor will expect from a normal return. And
Yeah.
so it's almost like that, where it's like, how do you remove the corporate slash
Mm.
VC mode of thinking and not apply those metrics to students?
Yeah.
Because you can do it, because you can quantify how much a life is worth if you want to go
Yeah.
down to the granular thing. But that's a mindset difference, because I've been a banker, so it's like
Mm.
I know these metrics of things, but the human element is the thing that I think we're still reckoning with. So, and there's not enough places where you can run experiments and have a value right away. So it's like even if in some of these great institutions of the Ivy League, you can have research, but the research takes 5 years to get into a classroom.
Yeah.
And if you're in an underserved community, you might not even get that.
Yeah.
And
for
then
sure.
like, but if you're, a company bankrolling the study, you can train your employees on this latest breakthrough of ST, whatever else that makes them more effective. So I think it's
Yeah.
that like almost like humanizing the metrics of success and also having places to explore. It's like, even, it can be just tricky even with, I got the Harvard, MIT, all this stuff, but
Yeah.
it's still like fighting to prove the value of what I'm
Why?
doing. But I'm also fortunate enough where I can do it regardless of if I'm funded or not. Like this is like my own internal experiments.
Yeah.
But I've been able to find co-conspirators with it, but also like to be like, nope, like this is not a good fit for you. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Where
yeah.
so and then it's trendy where it's like, all right, at a certain point, certain styles of educations in the arts become the trendy thing.
Yeah.
And like I'm kind of waiting for that point where it's like we're getting past the trying to just metricize everything and because it's not sustainable.
Yeah.
So now I'm writing that arc where it's like, all right, what are the real things that we can now AI can be perfect. If you want the perfect, if you want the crispy predictable things, we've got something for that. But like there's a space of human element, and then also this long way to answer, but like what is actual preparation for workforce development? So at a certain point, you got to have imagination to even think about how you might want to make a living, or even if you're using a tool and you don't have imagination, then like you're gonna make something that's predictable, and now you're not as valuable. So some of those are just kind of the
Which is
high level
beautiful.
things.
Yeah, no, this is very beautiful because towards like the end of this podcast, I'm curious to know like what do you feel like is the superpower of arts if you have to like summarize what it means, because you have been talking a lot about like different things like its imagination and like workforce and like, and all of this starts early. Like I feel like it's like we're not training when we're teaching arts or having class. It's not like we're training them to become just artists professionally. It's their choice. Like it's more about like how do we bring this like human element and just like thinking skills. And I'm curious, like, what are your thoughts on that? Like, I know you have been mentioning.
Oh yeah, yeah. So I think we're gonna go back to what we said earlier. Is agency. So like to have practices in agency. So in like we have these superpower AI tools, but if you don't play around with the bounds of agency, like how much is generation versus augmentation versus, and even to find that line of what is even unique new human expression. So that's kind of like that fuzzy part that I think we need to get right. But on the other side, I think like it's to have environments that have joy, energy, self-expression, because there's something about a human being fully expressed, seen, where it gets them outside of this box of how people might be valued. And so to it kind of breaks this, I almost call it like the spell of America. So like you know again, I do like traveling around and you go to indigenous practices, African cultures. You could there's like mixes of like things around the world that might be a little bit different, but beyond all this tech, how are we valuing people before some of these metrics and things? So I think it's that, but I'm doubling down on the practicing of agency as we get these new tools. But through the arts, these are decisions that you make where it's like these are your core preferences of expression. It might be a dance movement, it might be a drum pattern or rhythm, it might be these things, but it could still apply to, using an AI tool where it's like, okay, here's a preference that I have that works better for my workplace, and this is a thing that I believe is the most effective in tandem with maybe some computer boost. So it's that part, and then the last part of it is just going back to what is a joyful learning environment, because that's the contagious part. It's like, all right, like nobody wants to learn under like duress or strain stuff.
Yeah, the motivation part also, like, oh, how do we bring like more that? And I think that's also very underrated in schools. It's like this joy which you're talking about is nobody talks about that. It's like other children actually like happy or they're settled being in that class or not. But nobody actually is mentioning or talking about, which is great.
Yeah.
So thank you for that. And I always end the podcast with like one question you're sitting with right now.
Hmm. I would say how do we encourage people, even outside of education and all these things, to just do more experiments?
Yeah.
So, like, questioning the norm slash do an experiment.
Yeah. Yeah, that's
Yep.
awesome. Thank you so much.
All right.
Thank you so
Thank
much. That
you.
was
Thank you.
amazing. Thank you so much to like
Yeah.
share your